Lakini mimi nakuambia rais, ukifukuza Martha Koome usikanyange hapa Meru.
Ladies and gentlemen, Martha Koome is among the most senior women in leadership as we speak today in the country, the Republic of Kenya. And Martha Koome actually is leading the judiciary, that is as the president of the judiciary. And as we speak today, Martha Koome, most of the Kenyans are watching her because of what the judiciary means to this country. Not just Martha Koome is in leadership. We have the control of budget, Margaret Nyakango. And we also have Gitonga, that's Nancy, who is also doing very well in her docket as the Auditor General of the Republic of Kenya, which are all independent officers in the Constitution of Kenya. So, ladies and gentlemen, Martha Koome has been the one, these other two ladies have been doing well, but Martha Koome has been the one that Kenyans have been looking at closely. Why? It's because of the cases that usually occur in the Supreme Court, in the judiciary, let me say in short. Because you realize that the lower courts rule against a certain government case. But upon reaching the Supreme Court, you realize that the Supreme Court overturns and completely ignores the opinion of the lower courts. Now, not once, not twice, several cases of government went to the judiciary, and actually, to be specific, the Supreme Court, and they were overturned because of the reasons they know to the best level. But the perception from Kenyans was that the judiciary led by Martha Koome is compromised. Now, usually William Ruto traps anyone he feels like he's not comfortable working with. For instance, Japhet Koome, who was fixed, and eventually when the protest occurred, he was the one who was sacrificed. Just use that as an example. So Martha Koome was waited for to make a mistake despite actually accepting to work with President William Ruto. She's just been waited for to make a mistake and then get kicked out of office. So there were allegations that there were some corruption cases and some issues with the Supreme Court judges. And the person who was supposed to go home was Martha Koome and the entire Supreme Court judges. And as we speak today, I think there are proceedings going on. Probably the court was supposed to rule against that. And we are waiting to hear what the court will say about it. But I think it ruled, and to some extent they prevented the Supreme Court judges from being investigated. Ladies and gentlemen, what am I driving this point to? When Martha Koome was almost getting kicked out of office, the plan was there to get out of that office before 2027, because we all know what the Supreme Court does. The only person who came out to defend Martha Koome, it was Gachagua. He was right in Meru and he said, President William Ruto, if you touch Martha Koome, don't step here in Meru. So from that perspective, you could see that Gachagua was creating some relationship between him and Martha Koome and the entire judiciary. But now something serious happened here. After Gachagua had defended Martha Koome that much, suddenly, or not maybe even suddenly, but according to the court processes, the case that was ruled against Gachagua that actually supported the impeachment, let me use that layman language, supported the impeachment, and upheld the impeachment of Gachagua, it was later found that the Supreme Court, the judges that formed that bench, the three-bench judge, literally was constituted illegally. So the court ruled that the Supreme Court judge, the head of the Supreme Court, was the person who was supposed to constitute that bench, but not the deputy. So the case is supposed to be heard again. The judges are supposed to sit. And Martha Koome was expected to constitute a new bench of 3 judges. Now, we first remember that when the 3-judge bench was constituted, despite Mwili not being the legitimate person to constitute the bench, also, we know very well that Rigathi Gachagua's lawyers opposed some judges from being part of that bench. So Rigathi Gachagua was not comfortable with having some of those judges there. Now, when the case was ruled against the government, and that now the Supreme Court judge bench was constituted illegally, Now Martha Koome was expected to come up and constitute another bench that will be able to hear the impeachment case of Rigathi Gachagua. Now, surprisingly, Martha Koome literally betrayed Rigathi Gachagua. On what basis? He reconstituted the same bench of judges which were first constituted by Philomena Mwilu, the Deputy CJ, the Deputy Chief Justice of the Republic of Kenya. That was a huge betrayal. And on this video here, I want to take you through step by step on what I feel strongly that has happened as far as Rigathi Gachagua and Martha Koome is concerned. But before I take you through, if this is the first time you're watching my videos, take a second or two to subscribe. After subscribing, ladies and gentlemen, my number is always here. You can reach out, share with me on various political matters that can enable me learn more on how to do politics. Apart from that, at least can also enable me to know what is your opinion on various matters that I touch on this analysis. You can also support the channel using the same number. Let me dive into the topic today. Now, what is basically happening, it is that Martha Koome is trying to show that he cannot work under pressure. Nobody can direct her on what to do. Nobody can simply tamper with the court processes by ignoring Gachagua's support and deciding not to constitute a new bench. I think from my point, if there's any favor Gachagua needed, it's just even to replace that bench judge bench, because he had issues with them from the beginning. But now, what do we expect to come out different from this bench judge this time around? Nothing. Why? Because they're the same people, and there's no way they can change their opinion, because that will affect them seriously. But nevertheless, it's a clear indication that Ruto is still in charge of the judiciary, in that if it happens that Martha Koome tampers with the process of taking Rigathi Gachagua home, it's going to be an easy chaos and a tough process for her to get her out of office as well, because already the process is there. So probably that case that is undergoing right now for the Supreme Court judges also affected the decision making of Martha Koome. Secondly, we know very well that Martha Koome, in this kind of a scenario, she has to be careful on the aspect that it does not appear that he's favoring Rigathi Gachagua, because he is from the mountain. And therefore, she has to act as ruthless as she can based on the law. But my point that I feel here strongly is that despite Rigathi Gachagua being from the mountain, he also deserves some fairness. If he had an issue with the judges, it's a deal could have just replaced the judges to give, even if it's the same thing but in a different way. So therefore, Martha Koome has entirely disappointed Rigathi Gachagua, and that is a big betrayal for the people of the Mount Kenya to some extent, because it is not fair for Martha Koome to literally, after Rigathi Gachagua defended her, to come out and bring the same judge bench that Rigathi Gachagua had an issue with. At least to bring a fresh one, so that even if Rigathi Gachagua goes home, it appears that at least the people who was not against are the ones who have also given out the same outcome. I don't know what you think about this, but on the comment section, let me see what you think.